welcome to this very special podcast with some of the folks who know the libertarian spectrum. They have read books. I'm Anup Zombie, and this is particular chapter 1 that we are starting right now is to help people understand more about what to read if you are interested in the libertarian spectrum. And so I have 3 very special guests with me. I've got Dhruv, who is also the author of the manifesto, Libertarian Party of India manifesto. I've got Om. I don't know if it's real name or it's a sound he makes when he's happy, but he's here as well, Om. And finally, I've got Pooja, who's been reading these books ever since she was 17. So let's get started, shall we? So how are you guys doing today? Feeling good?
Yeah, feeling good.
Great, yeah.
Thank you, Anup,
Alright.
for your
Okay,
kind
so
words, by the way.
Yeah, really, thanks, man. Thank you for
Alright,
having
yes.
us.
Right.
And thank you
Yes,
for
so
inviting
let's
us on
get-
the platform as well.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. You're welcome. Anytime. All right, so let's just dive into books, shall we? So first, let me start with you, Dhruv. What got you into reading libertarianism books and becoming an anarchist for one thing? Like, what happened there?
Just a slight correction. I'm not an anarchist per se. I believe in a limited government. But see, I'll tell you my trajectory of politics. Year 2019, I campaigned for the Modi government very, very strongly. Very strongly, with all my passion, heart and soul. I was barely, 15, 16 then? And yet I did that because I was very politically active. And the year 2020 struck when the COVID lockdowns really came. And then I saw all these governments who were supposedly the carriers of the light of freedom, all extinguish that light out of free will and then just trample over everyone's rights. And I saw businesses close down for no apparent reason, for a virus lockdown. I'm not a scientific expert, so we'll keep the issue of COVID aside, but the amount of tyranny that was exhibited during those times, such as you can't do this, you can't do that, you should, it wasn't a recommendation. It wasn't a mandate. It was by force and by sheer brute force. So that got me really thinking. And after that, the justifications that were given, the justifications of taxpayers' money, for distribution, so that in their election they don't face severe losses. And in the end, they did end up facing severe losses. So that really got me into thinking whether I believed really that this government would actually bring in prosperity, or is this just continuing what the previous governments did, just in a different flavor. And that really got me into the libertarian canon, and that's when I discovered a particular podcast, the very famous podcast by Naval Ravikant and Joe Rogan, and that got me even deeper in the libertarian political spectrum. And come Ayn Rand, it was there was no turning back then.
Okay, so
Nice.
it was a podcast that finally really got you into this this kind of a thing, right? So hopefully people will be inspired by all you guys' words in this podcast as well. So let's head over to Pooja now. Pooja, how did you fall into this now? Like what?
So the thing about me was I was very rebellious as a teenager, and someone recommended that I go ahead and read Ayn Rand. I bought the book and I started reading it, and the first scene blew my mind. So the first scene is about the protagonist quitting his college because he thinks that he's not learning anything there. Yeah, that's
The
the
book?
book, the one that he's picking up. Fountainhead.
Fountainhead.
Yeah, Fountainhead. So I started reading that, and the first scene itself is a hook that you cannot ever forget. Time and again, whenever I have failed at things, I've gone back to that scene. And as you move through the themes elucidated by Ayn Rand, you question certain assumptions that society puts on you. So, for example, education is supreme. Is it really? Do we learn anything? You ask those questions. Are regulations necessary? Tend to question rules, which is something which is absent in our society. Someone tells us that we can't do this, we can't do that, we just accept it. So that's how I got into Ayn Rand and into libertarianism and Ayn Rand. I think she's the initiator into this ideology for a lot of people across the world, not just me. And once you've read her, gravitate towards economics, hardcore economics on your own. And that's what happened to me as well. During my college days, I was actively associated with a communist group in my undergrad days. And I would constantly question them. I would constantly have debates with them. And at most of our discussions, they would just shut me up Tell me I'm a child and I don't know anything and I need to go out into the field, and I did that too. I went out into the field and I worked and I kept asking them a simple question: when is the revolution happening? I guarantee no one will answer that question because there is no revolution. It's just a way to brainwash you into thinking that life is bad and you should be a cynic. Libertarianism, on the other hand, turns you into an optimist. You want to do things, question rules, get the job done. I'm also a political economist by training. So once I got into libertarianism, I've read Hayek, I've read Friedman, I've read most of their advices for the economy, and I think they work. So that's how I got into libertarianism.
Quite
That's
the
very
story.
interesting.
So it basically started off with questions, like suddenly just a light bulb just hit, and then from there it was you started diving into it. All right, thank
I
you.
was suspended from school actually for bringing a mobile phone into the school at that point of time. So then it was like, why can't I bring it? I'm not using it. I'm a grade A student. I'm a constant topper. Why can't I just bring my phone? And it was a stupid rule. So
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
how
like,
it started.
you bring up an important point. There are plenty of students now as well, who are rebelling against the system, with cameras that are around. They don't want them around. It's almost as if they are being spied on, they are being constricted, and they are acting out in different ways, right? So there was this video about people turning to smoking and drinking or whatever it is, and there were people taking videos of it. But that was my point on X as well, that hey, these people that's not the issue. Acting out against your against your unwanted rules, regulations, pressure, and stuff like that. So I kind of
Can I say something on that? I actually do have a perspective from the field there. A
Okay.
lot of private colleges in Delhi organize parent-teacher meetings nowadays. Colleges have PTMs, and these are undergrad grown-up kids who have jobs or doing their own podcasts, and their parents are coming to meet their teachers. I think that's ridiculous. When they don't show up to class, their parents get a text. I think we should raise our kids better. We should trust them more. I mean, that's my opinion, because this system did not exist when I was in college, and I ran websites and I organized festivals, and I didn't have parental supervision on me all the time.
right.
So I think we need to tone it down. Yes, security is absolutely important, but we need to tone it down a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I also get that. Even in I mean, I'm quite old, dinosaur compared to a lot of you, but when I was growing up in the 80s, I felt I could take care of myself by the time I was 13, 14, at that age, and I didn't really need people telling me, what to do. It's not a now thing. It's a generational thing that's been happening for years, which I also didn't care for. Actually, we used to be beaten up black and blue, right? I mean, like I remember my hands would be swollen by the time I come home with literally black and blue, because you'd get beaten by like long bamboo sticks, and sometimes these aimless professors will miss your hand and hit you right here on that bone, and it'll feel like. So we rebelled. We actually rebelled against all of that during those. You guys have to thank us, because that is why your kids and all that are not going to be beaten up from now on, because a lot of us rebelled against the system at that time, and we didn't like it at all. And yeah. So let's get to Om. Let's get to Om here.
Yes.
What brings you to the abyss?
Yes, so I have been reading about Austrian school basic economics, whether it's Marxism or the Austrian school, and I got into this by reading a book named as Money Wars. It's by Royce Smith, and in the first introduction chapter, they mentioned the importance of capital
Okay.
and how England became the one of the leading nations to rule across the globe. And over there was one economist named Walter Bagot, where he matlab, gives a very simple example of how a person, an upstart, can come and displace the old powers who are into the business by borrowing money. And there was only one place in the world at that point of time, that was the London Stock Exchange, where they could borrow the money and take on other entrepreneurs. And they had given a very good example, and they go back to their typical European and Scottish heritage of economists from Adam Smith to a couple of others. And that got me interested into this. Basically, my background is into commerce and finance, and I used to read about a lot of our hedge funds and how they used to work, and how they betted against stupid government policies So that got me interested, and I started reading about Hayek, Milton Friedman, Walter Williams, Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell is my favorite though, and I have read about a couple of Indian economists as well. One of the previous RBI governors, Mr. Raghuram Rajan. I have read a couple of his books as well. There are other players as well, but the idea of libertarian thought was really attractive to me personally. The reason being is that whatever experience I had in business and life, I think we live in a transactional world, and we serve our own interest, self-interest. That is the reason we don't like some other third person coming and telling us to impose ideas on us and put us artificial regulation and restrictions on us. So it goes the same with the government, and that's how I got into it and started researching, watching a lot of videos on YouTube. There's a couple of channels on YouTube also. Uh, the Hayek's Mises University is there. Then this Milton Friedman's of freedom.
So all of you guys listen to some kind of podcast, is it
Yeah, it's not a podcast as such.
all these podcasts like
For Thomas Howell has one of his interviewers, and he is the best one to when it comes to explaining. And only Milton Friedman will be the greatest person who, or a debater, I would say, who can put an idea across. The most important thing is that to transfer an idea from what I have in mind to the average person is very important. So Milton Friedman, he has speeches, he has debates going on with socialists, government people, even with
right.
businessmen, and that's how I got into this. So read about
Excellent.
it,
All right.
yeah. And one more thing is that
All right, Om. Let's head into our book discussion as well. Thank you
Acha, acha.
for the introduction. We've got a lot to discuss today. So let's talk books, shall we? Let's talk books. Dhruv, this question is for you. Philosophy and theory books. Like, if you were to suggest books along this genre in libertarianism, what would
I think starting from the basics, I'd certainly suggest two treatises of government by John Locke. It gave birth to when you hear the word liberty, you can somehow trace it back to John Locke. That's pretty much it. So that is and it's not very big, I suppose. It's like 300-ish maximum pages in length. It's really great, really, really well written. Additionally, for political philosophy per se, I'd also recommend Spencer or John Mill, either of whom you prefer. J.S. Mill is very, I don't know if in modern terms he'd be a social liberal, and Herbert Spencer is the king of all conservatives, literally, because like every old American conservative worshipped Herbert Spencer. These are some books if you are very into political political philosophy. But one important thing that I'd certainly recommend is Ayn Rand. And the reason for recommending that is once you the modern day branding of philosophy is really, really pathetic. Once you think philosophy, some people associate it with theology, some people associate it with spiritualism, although philosophy has correlation or intersections with all of them. But philosophy by itself is a very important special discipline, and Ayn Rand was the best salesman for it. So once you get, as Pooja's already talked about, if you read The Fountainhead, that book is not about politics. It's not about any other superficial thing you'd think of. It's about personal liberation. It's about you. It's about how you should live your life. It's about what exactly is heroism. It deals
Right.
with those things, and it deals.
let
with
me throw this question to Pooja now. Like, what is Dhruv talking about in terms of personal freedom? Like, what did you find in Ayn Rand? Basically, that, or any of the books that you kind of like about philosophy. That are there any anecdotes that you can share with us as to what passages in these books actually gave you, or what kind of philosophy in these books actually gave you that feeling of personal freedom?
Okay, so that's a very, very long answer. And I'm gonna take issue with the Ayn Rand's projection of the female protagonist in The Fountainhead. I did not like that. I connected more with Howard Roark.
Why didn't you like that? Tell us why
Because
you
I
didn't like
genuinely don't think that any woman is like that. I think, and I
Like
don't
what?
know.
Like what? I'm now curious. Like what? Like
Okay, so She's always torn between 2 or 3 men in the book. She's
Okay.
always doing things contrary to her true nature. She loves Roark, but she marries 2 different men, in the end going back to Roark. I think that's a lot of confusion. But to her
But
credit,
what happened between their relationships? Was it like
I'll just say don't drop spoilers, okay, for people who haven't read
yeah,
it's
because
okay.
that's
Don't worry,
that's a
don't worry about
spoiler.
that.
Na? There's a very controversial scene. There are many
It's
many
okay, don't
controversial
worry.
scenes there.
Yeah.
But then I loved her projection of Dagny Taggart in the Atlas Shrugged. So that's a very long book, and I don't think, yeah, so a lot of people pick up the Fountainhead, they imbibe those values of choice and liberty and questioning the authority.
But why? There could have been a reason for her not to be with one guy or the other, right? Or was the reason like something
there
that
is
didn't agree?
like it'll start a philosophical debate here. Rand
Right.
has given justification within the book there that she the heroine in the Fountainhead thinks that the world does not deserve the hero, so she being part of the world and she not able to help him actually get what he deserves. She's punishing herself in a way.
Right,
So that's
right.
why she's marrying people who she genuinely despises, not dislikes.
Really?
Despises. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. What did he say?
He said that she ends up marrying people she totally despises.
No, she does not despise Vinand. They are Gail Vinand.
She despises. Yeah, it's actually written in the book.
Initially she did, but then
Yeah,
she
yeah.
started
Later she
liking
doesn't.
Gail Vinand when
But-
she got to know him.
There's a.
How about you, Om?
Passage.
What do you think about this
I just
thing?
quote.
I mean, I love it. This is exactly what happens when people actually look at these books. The perception of one thing about the text and how you actually get that
Perceive
it is very different from the rest. Om, yeah. Om, how what do you think?
About Ayn Rand, a lot of friends of mine have recommended the book, but I have not taken the effort to read about it, though she was the inspiration
All
for
right.
Steve Jobs. But I have seen the movie, and the basic idea from my perception is everything about perception. Okay, right now we have one lady and one gentleman who are disagreeing about the same aspect, so the view is different. Basically,
Hold on. What is the name of this movie? The movie was called Foundation, right? That was the movie, right? The movie
there's
was
one
called
Fountainhead and
Foundation.
Atlas Shrugged as well.
And how close it is? Is it close to the book, or did they manage to?
Ayn Rand herself wrote the screenplay.
Okay. So it would have been like true to the
Close
story
enough,
and
close
the
enough.
script, right? Okay.
Because
So
in the book,
do you guys recommend people watching Fountainhead?
yes,
10 on
yes.
10.
No.
100%.
I love this. So this is
I mean, if
more
there's a
of
movie ever made on the Atlas Shrugged, go ahead, watch it. But Fountainhead, I wouldn't recommend. The movie, I think it's really badly written. They have cut a lot of good scenes from there, actually.
But
Okay,
you
well,
can't
like,
you can't
what
make a
scene do
movie
you
on
think
the
should have
book,
been
and book
included?
is more detailed.
Like, there's a scene where this guy is commissioning a bank, the architecture.
Yeah. Continue, Pooja. Yes.
No, I think someone was saying something. It's okay, they can chime in here.
No. Please go ahead. I want to hear this aspect of things.
So I think that this guy commissions Roark for the architecture of a banking institution in there. And he's there in front of the board of directors defending Roark's design, and he says to Roark, you know why I'm going to win this? Because I know exactly what I want. And he's thought about it. I think
Right.
that one scene should have been there. They've put in a
Okay.
lot of glamorous scenes, I agree, but the book is definitely better, in my opinion.
And the book is always going to be better than the movie for all movies and movie
Because
adaptations.
the movie manifests itself in your imagination, right? Rather
Yes, and
than somebody
it's
else
crammed into
putting
2 or
things
3
together.
hours.
Right. How about are there any Indian exponents of or Indian authors or anybody who's even having podcasts or whatever it is? So are there
So
any noteworthy Indian kind of things that Omkar? How about you? Why don't you start?
So one person, what Dhruv had mentioned regarding the introduction that during the time of COVID-19 1920, the government had imposed, restrictions on people to move, to conduct business, and have the freedom in a so-called republic democracy, what we have right now over here. And the freedom was taken away like this. And it was a totalitarian situation. And at that point of time, I had mentioned in the previous meeting also we had, Anup, that I used to follow Yuhan Tengra. He has a channel on YouTube as well, and he had filed a case against the government as well as Serum Institute of India, which is Poonawalla.
Guys, I have one request. All right, the books and all that you guys are sort of
mentioning.
recommending, if you guys can put, mentioning, could you kind of put them in the chat as well so that I can share it on screen and, so that people will be watching it live and they can take notes of it if they want to. Right. So, Omkar, go ahead. Yeah.
So at that point of time, he had taken the initiative and he had gone to the streets, he had filed a case, he had won the case against the government of India as well as Serum Institute because they were imposing to take us vaccine. And after that, when you might have come across that the Supreme Court had passed a judgment that it is not necessary for people to take vaccination and move. The private companies should have their own choices to take people who have vaccination or who don't have the vaccination. So he had one of the person whom I know about, actively talking about libertarian thought 2-3 years prior to this movement what we have right now over here. And at that time, I had also mentioned him that on YouTube that you're doing a great job. At that time on Twitter, there was, as far as I was concerned, there was not a lot of traction. And as per the economic perspective or any knowledgeable person who is purely coming from a libertarian or Austrian school of thought, I don't know. A lot of people are there from the Chicago school of thought, which is very similar, but they differ on the monetary aspect, how to run the government. They are like 90% as same as the Austrian school of economics. They are also libertarians, but when it comes to running the government and the Federal Reserve and the banking system, they differ quite differently.
Right. At the end of the day, okay. Indian,
I'd just like to chime in here a bit and just mention 2 sentences that from a historical perspective, not many people know this, but the original founders of the Indian National Congress were very, I'll say it quite frankly, were visionary men and very far ahead of times. They were what we would call classical liberals. In particular, I'd like to single out 2 special men. Gopal Krishna Gokhale. He's severely underrated. And that is because he did have some political issues. He was quite literally, he viewed the British government as saviors in part, which certainly wasn't true. But Dadabhai Nairoji, everyone knows him. And the amount of economic sophistication that he's delivered and the amount of drain, he coined the term drain theory and he expounded it. So the amount of economic sophistication that these two exhibited, the amount they established the roots of what was classical liberalism in India. So these 2 authors I'd certainly recommend. And additionally, I'd just like to give a tip that have some nuance while reading history in general, because you will never 100% agree with any figure whatsoever. So and you'll certainly find core issues with them, but don't have the big picture in view.
The way life was run those days itself was a lot different from how. So a lot of the references may not apply to what we are doing today. How about you, Pooja? What do you think about all of this?
I think I missed a lot of what Dhruv was saying. Uska audio is not clear to me for some reason.
Louder, Dhruv, louder!
Can you just summarize, because I don't want to be repetitive.
I recommended Gopal Krishna Gokhale and Dadabhai Nairoji in terms of classical liberalism in India.
C.K. Gokhale
and I suppose there's I suppose there's some audio disturbance on your side because we can hear a fan or some instrument.
Do you have a headphone? I think you're sorry.
Can't really find a headphone for it right now.
Okay, all right. Don't worry about it. I'll put you on mode. No worries. Let's
so basically you just asked some of the books that we'd recommend, right?
From the Indian perspective, is there anybody who
Okay, so I think people can pick up the manifesto of the Swatantrata Party, India's largest opposition party after independence, and they kind of shut down and morphed into the Jan Sangh, and now we have the BJP. Let's not go into the nitty-gritties of what is happening right now, but if you want, you can read the manifesto of Swatantrata Party from India. In the current scholars, I'd recommend Sanjeev Sanyal. His books are actually really awesome. Harsh Madhusudan.
Right.
The guy who wrote A New Idea of India with him,
Guys, can you
Rajiv
see
Mantri,
Pooja?
I think. I'm forgetting his name. Maybe I got it wrong. Rajiv Mantri.
It is correct. Rajiv Mantri is correct.
Yeah,
Right.
and the earlier manifestos, the initial manifestos of the Jan Sangh, they also have certain ideas like that.
Right. So, the Swatantra Party's manifesto, was there anything in particular that caught your eye? Did anything in particular catch your fancy out of that? What is it about their manifesto that actually they did get 44 seats in the Lok Sabha that year that they put in a lot of effort in? So what was it?
To me, what attracted me to them was their recognition of the statist trends in Nehru's policies. Now, as you probably see even today and in the Congress era, or rather the entire 1990s and noughties and today, the state is over-regulating, and we have very few people who go ahead and say, let's stop this, let's recognize this. C. Rajagopalachari did that. He won elections, he fought and he won. Of course, the demography is very different today, and it's very difficult to convince people that the state is not needed in certain areas. But I'm just happy they got on to this trend, because actually back then no one really did.
Why do you think it failed though? What happened to people who were invested in the idea, right? There were quite a lot of seats. They were the biggest opposition at that time. What happened? What do you think happened?
My opinion is that in any political party, at that point of time, you would have found many currents. The Congress consolidated under Indira Gandhi. There was one trend with the support of the Communist Party of India. They had an ideological I'm just going to call it propaganda, because to me it just sounds like propaganda. They can call it information, socialist information, I'd call it propaganda. Other parties of the time did not have this luxury, and there was a lot of politics going on. If you remember, there was Congress O, there was Congress I, lots of people were turning turn, etc., etc. Today we have an anti-defection law. People can't do that. People can't really speak up against the political party. So back then it would have been extremely difficult to maintain unity in a country increasingly enamored by socialist ideas. So I think that's what happened, but I'd say that I'm purely speculating this, because I don't know what happened to them. They just morphed into Jansang. It's like a Pokemon evolving,
Right. How about you, Dhruv? What are your thoughts on why it didn't take off?
I think the idea of independence was very nascent when these parties came into existence. So the problem was there was constant wars, famines, the industries were shackled, and the socialists had, I agree with Pooja that the socialist propaganda is very, very strong, and additionally this was a very big catalyst. Like, if there's constant wars, famines and droughts, you can just say, hey, it's manufactured by the rich people. At the same time, those rich people are our friends, but you can conveniently look that over. So that's exactly what happened. At least that's what I think that happened, that caused the downfall of Swatantrata Party. And they also had poor marketing. Like, Nehru genuinely called them the party of zamindars and kings, and obviously you'll call your opposition unspeakable names, but people forget that it had Cariappa, the second field marshal of India. It had VP Menon, the man who actually unified India alongside Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. And of course it did have certain Maharajas, but everyone has a freedom.
Pooja, I can see you want to say something. Let's go.
Yeah, because what we don't take into account at that point of time are international trends also.
Right.
There's a lot going on there. We're not trading as much with the United States, and Russia is our main partner. 1971, we have the Indo-Russian Friendship Treaty right there. So, I think that also played a role. There's not a lot of cultural mix between India and the United States.
Hold on. How did the Indo-Russia Treaty play a role here? Like, what exactly happened?
Similar ideology, that's it. Obviously, there's geopolitical implication as well, because USSR was coming in. And they were expanding and taking over all these stans, which is Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and that is one of the reasons. And America, which has taken the Anglosphere from the Britain, had installed the puppets over there in Pakistan. India was trying to find a natural ally. Obviously, they had the ideological match with Russia, and Pakistan is now being funded by America, unfortunately. Though they do a lot of trade with India and not with Pakistan, but it is a geopolitical game. Along with economics and everything, we have the geopolitical angle as well.
Let's talk a little bit about economics, right? So when you think about economics, Milton Friedman is someone that comes to mind. Also, along with a host of other people, of course. What do you think is the biggest economic perspective that these libertarian books actually brought to the fore? Like, what do you think were the key things that made people stand up and take notice, hey, this is something that we need to, or just blew your mind or whatever? Dhruv.
So can I answer, Anup?
Thank you.
Sure. Go ahead.
I'm sure that both other panelists do want to jump in on this, and they, like Pooja is definitely trained in this profession, but I certainly think that the most core aspect that libertarian economics has expounded is mind over heart. You have to make cold decisions which at the heat of the moment you'll certainly think are cruel, because you'll be like, hey, the rich guy has so and so dollars and I, or so and so rupees, crores of rupees, and the poor person is struggling to eat, and which is a true fact. But you'll still have to argue and say, hey, if you give some of that rich man's money to the poor person, you're de-incentivizing being rich itself. So other people will have no incentive or have a reduced incentive to actually contribute more to the economy. So that is like specifically libertarian economics, not going into philosophy. This is the theory that has already been expounded.
Guys, one thing, when you do it in the chat, no, can you send it to the live stream chat rather than the studio chat? I think Dhruv has been putting it in the live stream chat, but if you guys home as well, if you can put your list of books or thoughts in the live stream chat, I think I should be able to put them on screen, you know.
Live stream chat.
So basically like this right now, you can see it on screen, that what Dhruv has recommended as his work. So, or you can just copy and paste from that one. So where were we?
Economic ideas.
So Dhruv, what were you talking about? Like quickly.
I just said that the core idea given by, well, libertarian economics, or at least the way as I see it, is that mind over heart. You have to make decisions looking at long-term effects,
Okay.
and not go into emotional or political vendetta.
Right. How about you, Pooja? What do you think? Well, you must be dying to jump in on this one.
I was looking for the live chat. Sorry.
All right. Basically based on... Sorry, just a noise. I'm not also able to hear. Yeah, go on, please. Yeah. All right. So let's move on to some of your personal favorites, right? So some of your personal favorite books. I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to count to 3, and all of you have to say your personal favorite out of all these libertarian books, like at the same time. All right, at the same time. So you're not like influenced by anybody around here, or you're not hiding in things. So, all right, first book that you have read multiple times, like multiple times you have read this book and you probably cannot put it down. On 3, okay? 1.
Atlas Shrugged.
Oh my god, that was unanimous. Why is Atlas Shrugged such a big deal?
Think technology, think political freedom, think progress, think optimism, think personal liberty, think political liberty, combine all of them and multiply it by 1,000, you get Atlas Shrugged.
Hold on, I have to call in a visitor right here. What's up? You got a job as a waiter. What's happening? So everybody, welcome Tushar to the stream. He's the founder of the...
Hello, Mr. President.
Really?
Yeah, that's true. Fast fashion has killed it.
So Dhruv, it's like you and me versus the world, I think, right now. We are the
I am
team.
ready to fight this. Elon Musk wears this, Steve Jobs wore it, people who actually contribute, and politicians wear suits. So I'll take a t-shirt.
I think we are asking the wrong person. Pooja, what do you think people should wear? Should they be, the men should wear? Should they be wearing what Tushar is wearing? Or should they be just like, come as you are type?
I love a man in a suit and a bow tie. Equally good as a t-shirt.
JNU grad.
Alright, okay. So Omkar, you two have lost. You don't have a suit, so there you go. Join us. Right. Alright, welcome Tushar to the stream. Do you have any thoughts on I'm sure you picked up a little bit of the conversation that we are having.
What's your favorite book? Start with there.
Yeah, what's your favorite book? So here it's unanimously Atlas Shrugged. What was your favorite book? Robinson Crusoe?
Yeah, Robinson Crusoe.
Are you kidding? That's a libertarian book. How is...
It's a self-help struggle.
I don't remember him being that happy on that island. Was he happy, like being alone? Like he started talking to coconuts and all of that, like at some point. Right. That is.
I
true.
believe.
Yeah, he wasn't resentful also.
Anup, you're mistaken for that other movie or something. Robinson Crusoe wasn't. Initially, he had that mental. Castaway is a different thing. Robinson Crusoe was
there were parts where he was
very similar situations.
At the end of the day, there were times when he kind of missed civilization, right? If I'm not wrong. Right?
Yeah. He had the mental, again, it was he was in a position where he had to go through that mental, whether to
Libertarian
have a
good
mental
strategies.
breakdown or not, and
Just
to
like
overcome
Yeah,
that fear
yeah, I
and
know, I know.
surviving and having
Yeah,
a positive outlook on life.
right, right. How about you, Pooja? You look like you didn't like that at all. What's happening?
Sorry?
No,
No,
what are
I
your
love
thoughts
that
on
scene. I actually
you
love that
also
scene.
love that scene?
Yeah.
Okay, what about that scene that kind of like got your attention too? Like it was defiance, right? A little bit of
It's like lots of people keep thinking what you think of them. I'm sure a lot of people have asked you that question. I agree with SRK on this.
okay,
I don't think bad about you. I don't think good about you. I just don't think about you. That is my philosophy also, actually.
yeah,
I personally think, just to add here, that in that particular scene, as I read it, as I studied it, it meant about rejection of power. I don't want power over you. That's the, like, if you take politically, that's the message. People ask me, how would you control other people's life as a libertarian? That's the bloody point. I don't want to control your life for you. It's your life to lead it, and that's the message there. Not politically, but it's like, I don't want power. I don't want any sort of control
right.
over other people, or I don't want to supersede my control to them. It's me
Yeah,
and it's them.
this is a common issue, right? Like there are a lot of kids also who kind of feel, oh, I need somebody to look up to. I need like even include it could be a dad as well, right? I mean, like you want that approval. Like I'm sure like there are plenty of people in life just spending their entire life trying to get their seniors' approval, and that just destroys that fabric of that fiber of who they are. I can tell stories about my cousins, or it's just one of the things. It destroys their personality and things like that. So yeah, that's a good thing. So which books help people understand more about themselves, right? Which libertarian books would you suggest, where if you want to personally develop yourself, right? I mean, like in terms of your thinking and how you want to view the world, what would you suggest?
The Fountainhead is certainly a great resource to start off with, because it's so radical, it's so new, that it's very refreshing. There's only polarizing opinions on all of Ayn Rand. You'll never be like meh. No, you'll either really like it or you'll really hate it, and it will tell a lot about you. But additionally, much more than Fountainhead, I recommend one specific biography that I've had really, like, I have taken inspiration from what a man should be, and I've certainly looked up to him, and that's Ben Franklin by Walter Isaacson. It's
Right.
visible, and that's a great book. And it's not like, when you think about property rights or when you think about libertarian leaning people, you always think about some top executive or a CEO who's rich beyond repair. But this is one person who made it from genuine rags to riches, who was a printer, inventor, thinker, philosopher, politician, name it, and he was a polymath and an actual enlightenment
And
man
even
who actually-
even the concept of stonemasons, it was that, right? It was
yes
it was about that little bit of liberty
yes
that you wanted. You didn't want to conform to certain aspects of society, and you wanted that different kind of a thing. So yeah, so Pooja, what do you think? What is your
Additionally, I'd just like to, sorry for interrupting, just after Ben Franklin, I'd also like to recommend another American hero called Frederick Douglass. That man, you think about him, like, he was born a slave, but he escaped slavery. He campaigned for civil rights for black people, but much more than that, he did not hate white people, and that's, I can't tell you how big that is. If you have all your life you've been thrown this thing in your face that you do not belong to a particular skin color, and the people of the same skin color are there, but you still have the ability to go beyond that, around like 150 years ago, and you still go and say, hey, these aren't enemies, you shouldn't judge people beyond for their skin color, and that's a very big thing. So Ben Franklin and Frederick Douglass. I'm so sorry, Pooja, for interrupting you, but please continue.
yeah, Pooja, you're up.
I loved how passionate he is about Ben Franklin. Yeah.
I know, I could see that.
Okay, I think the Fountainhead is recommended by many people across the world, but for women, especially if you're looking to develop yourself and explore your own potential, just please read Atlas Shrugged. You can actually read Fountainhead secondary. I mean, put it on your second priority, but first should be Atlas Shrugged. The protagonist there is actually the definition of a working woman, someone who's smart and someone who gets the job done. So that's what you should be looking at. Then the next book I'd recommend is Elon Musk's biography. Please do read it, because you'll understand how to question rules and get the job done by focusing on the fundamentals. So for now, I just recommend these books, yeah.
Yeah, so I think Elon Musk's X account is a running commentary of his of his. It's like a live book. I could see exactly where he's coming from. But do you think his beliefs are based on libertarian principles? Was there anything in the book to suggest that, or was it just him and his life experience that he tried to sort of put it?
I don't think Elon Musk thinks in a very ideological fashion. He's an engineer by training.
Right.
When you read his book, so for example, let me give you an example from SpaceX. So they are bidding for a project with NASA, and NASA gives the contract to a company which they're trying to propel, and the company is in losses. And Musk files a suit and wins it. So he kind of works on logic. Why do we need this component? Why can't we get the job done cheaper? So that's how he works. This is logical, and I think if logic leads to libertarianism, as his association with Javier Milei and his investments in Argentina would suggest, then probably yes, he is. And the Dodge experiment, of course.
Right.
How can you
So
understand?
I'm sure there are some influences, but he hasn't explicitly given any credit in the book, right? About libertarianism. Has he done that?
His biography would suggest nothing of the kind at the moment, but his associations publicly and Dodge experiment does.
Yeah. No, it's very that Doge experiment is. It cannot get more libertarian than that, right? That Doge experiment
I
was a very
think in
clear.
a podcast with Ben Shapiro, he actually explicitly called out the free market. He said the free market is much more better than he for some time back he used to identify as a socialist, but no one believed him. And like he himself did not believe him probably. He actually in a recent podcast with Ben Shapiro actually said that I believe in the free market.
So yeah, that's a great point. Like, what do you think? For contemporary issues, right? For contemporary issues, what kind of books would you suggest people read for those kind of things? Like, for example, I think David Boaz is there as well in that list of things. So, what would you suggest people read for that? Like current issues, those kind of things that people can relate to a bit more. Like, what would you suggest?
I'm sure Pooja will have great recommendations, but from a technologist point of view, like I'm training to be a computer scientist. I'm in my undergrad, and I actually have interned, and I'm currently remotely interning at George Mason University, which is the bastion of free market ideas today. But keeping that aside, from a technologist perspective, two certain books that I'd certainly recommend every technologist read, and in general every person read. The first book is by Walter Isaacson, which is called Innovators: How a Group of Geeks and Nerds Built the Digital Age. And this is a very underrated book. Walter Isaacson has written great biographies on, I said, Musk, Steve Jobs, and this Ben Franklin. But this is a very underrated book because it is a book on a period, not a particular individual. And it tells you how innovation really works. Now, it's a very interesting concept because he actually has said that all throughout history, it requires the coordination of various teams for that's how mostly innovation works, and it isn't a single man, a bulb popping in his brain and innovation working like that. But it's very interesting for a libertarian to recommend it because he's not talking about coerced teamwork, he's talking about free will based teamwork, and that's what division of labor it basically is. Adam
Oh, how does that work? How does free will based teamwork work? I mean, like,
incentives.
Let's talk about a software company, right? Okay, so let's say there is this project manager who probably reports to a board of directors or something like that, or a VP of technology or something like that, and then there are people who, this is the current system, right? So, and then there are other managers, account type managers with different kinds of roles, right? There's one with let's say who takes care of the actual coding guys, takes care of the requirements and this and all that, and the rest are like the B population who basically does a lot of the grunt work in terms of writing these things and things like that, writing the code and things like that. So in a libertarian, could you kind of connect a libertarian society? How would this operate right now?
Well, if I were to give examples and actual anecdotes from the book, the most important anecdote for every computer geek out there is the internet. Two primary creators of the internet, Tim Berners-Lee and Mark Andreessen. Mark Andreessen also identifies as a libertarian, by the way, but Tim Berners-Lee and Mark Andreessen are great examples of this. Now, Tim Berners-Lee was an academic, a genuine academic, educated in Europe, systematic method of thinking. He wanted the internet to remain a file sharing system. Essentially, he wanted people to share papers, the information, the research over it all throughout the world at the speed of light. Mark Andreessen was this tinkerer who actually built the websites he actually gave internet the form it is today, where people can rant about the day and stuff like that. And he and Tim Berners-Lee actually later had a falling apart, but when they came together, they produced something that was really great. So in a modern computing scenario, it has already been done and will be done. And example being ChatGPT. So now AI or transformers were thought about by academics, but it was Google who had the funding to build it. If you go on the transformers paper, you can see that it is sponsored by Google and people employee working there. And additionally, the second book that I recommend for this particular scenario is a book by J. Stossel, which is called Where is My Flying Car? Now people actually say that, hey, if these technologies invented so much, and I also had this thinking that if these technologies invented so much, there's a very famous line by Ashley Vance that we wanted flying cars but we got 140 characters, making a parody of Twitter.
Right.
So why don't we have flying cars? And that book, you'll actually understand the value of what is the complete despicable scum that are regulators. And
technically, yes. Why don't we have flying cars? You could just fly straight
do
home.
read the book to read
like that just blows my mind. Like we learned to fly a long time ago. It wasn't
we have the technology to do
yesterday.
that. We have people interested in doing that. We have the funding of the world, but why don't we have flying cars? You'll read the book and you'll actually get to know that we are this close to actually mass.
Put that in the chat, all right? I want to stream it to people just so that they can have perspective on that. The other thing is, we haven't brought Road to Serfdom yet. Like we have not talked anything about Road to Serfdom, and it was basically critiqued for that collectivism and central planning aspects of what that book was talking about. What are your thoughts, Pooja, on
which book were you talking about?
Road to Serfdom.
Road to Serfdom by Hayek.
Yeah, Hayek.
I think it's way more than economics.
Yeah, it's not economics. I get that. Road to Serfdom is way more. It's about collectivism and planning and all of that, right? So, what do you think?
On the role of central banks, as talked about by Hayek, he opposes them.
Right.
But my opinion does not coincide with him on this subject, actually.
Okay, so you don't agree. Like, what are the points that you don't agree on with Road to Serfdom?
I think what he meant was the central bank's policy should not be dictated by the government. It's an ongoing debate, right? It's a debate on central bank independence. If central banks actually do get the freedom to decide policy, apart from fiscal policy and apart from needs of the government, they might function better. But since the nature of the currency itself is changing, and you have extremely badly failed experiments by the Fed and the Japanese central bank, so I think there's some merit there which I should also consider.
Okay. How about you, Dhruv?
I am a very philosophical guy and I believe in abstractions. So the abstraction that I see Hayek is, pitching in the Road to Serfdom is that he's of the same category of mind over heart. He starts with how socialism got this branding, because socialism, there's a very famous saying: if you aren't a socialist in your youth, you've got no heart. But if you aren't a capitalist in your old age, you've got no brain. And that's exactly how socialism has such a strong propaganda and energizes the youth. So that's what Hayek is addressing, not directly, but that's how he says that it's very great at rebranding. It rebranded into social democracy, and all throughout the book he's talking about that. And much more than that, he also says that intentions don't matter really, and well, your actions do. And if your actions are tyrannical, the results are all in front of you. But I just say my only cues with the book are it's very fixated on a small, although you must give him the benefit of doubt that information wasn't very readily available then, but it's very fixated to Western Europe, very, very Western Europe centric. But if you genuinely want to read a great economic and philosophical study, or a study in general of the perils of socialism, do have it. It's a really, really well written.
Right. What about, we haven't brought up Rothbard yet, have we? We haven't brought up Rothbard. So let's talk a little bit about Rothbard, basically New Liberty, if you guys have read that book. So this is basically something that really hits upon, the involvement of the government in society, right? So what do you guys think about that? Do you kind of, how about you, Pooja? Why don't you go ahead with this one?
Did you say Orwell?
No. Sorry, you're not able to hear me, is it?
No. I think I have bad audio. I think it's my computer. It's not you guys' fault.
Right. So we were talking about Rothbard's New Liberty. Rothbard.
No, I have not read that book.
You have not read that. How about you?
I'm not a fan of Rothbard, so I haven't really gone through major of his works. But one thing I found some common ground is Anatomy of the State.
Right.
it talks about, like, again, I don't really agree with the concretes that have been propounded that the state by itself is a influence, like a, as they say, a gangsters organization or a cartel. But I personally think that power corrupts, and that idea that he's propounded and talked about in the book, I find really interesting.
There are plenty of Rothbard fans around, right? There are plenty of sayings from him that will always float out on X.
Certainly.
Right.
Again, me not being a fan of Rothbard doesn't
I get
completely demolish his economic or social
Right.
contributions.
Then, how about your favorite fiction books, right? I mean, like fiction, I mean, Ayn Rand, of course, but do you guys have any other suggestions if people who are into fiction that they would like to dabble in, any book that you would recommend? Pooja, why don't you go ahead?
So one could read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and understand the absurdity of life itself. That's one. I mean, once you've read the guide, you're like, okay, you know what, whatever goes. You're talking about the bureaucrats.
Something. Okay, my kid will probably know that. But yeah, so I get your point. Like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is the perfect example of like the bureaucratic paper, and you.
The funny scene is that the girl is about to be executed and they want a stamp on a paper. Oh my god. And then that scene where he's picked up and everybody has to listen to the Vogon's poetry. Oh my god. Sometimes that's how echo chambers sound like.
Yeah. I mean, like, and also that number 43 kind of a scenario, that really, for me, that really spoke a lot to me, because it was like there is no answer to like all your problems just like that. You've got to figure out each and everything on your own. Like this collective ideology of, hey, there is this big answer. It could be, divine, or it could be anything. Does not exist. Like you have to like kind of like that just blew my mind, that the number 43, right? Was it 24, 43? 43.
Yes,
42. 42. It was number 42. So that kind of like, stuck with me, saying that, hey, there is no one size fits all, in a community as well. You kind of have to have your own solutions in place, and it could be totally unique from everybody else's, and you don't have to, sort of worry about it. What are your thoughts, Dhruv, on this topic?
I personally think that fiction is a great method to motivate yourself, and fiction is actually reality according to one person. One person's actually displaying what he thinks of the real world. So a great fiction book, I think, from a libertarian or a free market perspective, is Anthem by Ayn Rand. Again, Ayn Rand is a very important novelist, philosopher who unfortunately isn't discussed in the common discourse out there, but Anthem is a great book. It's a short book, hardly 100 pages, but everyone should read it. Additionally, George Orwell is a great man. Animal Farm, 1984, those are the works. And I'd certainly recommend one book which many people will have troubles relating it to libertarian philosophy, is Sherlock Holmes. Now, Ayn Rand has actually made that connection of why, of why he's the way he is and how he's supposed to do that. He isn't restricted to the standard lawmaking process. He knows the difference between right and wrong. He's objective in that, and he's not really violent. So that's how Sherlock Holmes is correlated to libertarian philosophy. Again, there's multiple ways of perceiving fiction, but I certainly recommend Sherlock Holmes.
I'm still trying to make the connection. Sherlock Holmes, was it because he thought very differently from the rest, and had his own ways of
those are major
doing things.
Some American libertarians will say because he does drugs, so he's a libertarian. But
he was what, addicted to opium or something?
Literally every drug. Cocaine, hard cocaine, many, like in the original works, definitely many.
I'm sure he was acting out against society. Like nobody would like 100%. Probably, he was so different from everybody else that he was like, okay, this is what
libertarianism doesn't, talk about sociopathy. He was sociopath. What we are trying to understand here is that law and morality are outside the government sphere. Government does a very poor job at best, and a criminal job, an evil job at its worst in enforcing morality. It can enforce law, it's good at that, and that's why we must keep its function to that, plain and simple.
Right. So Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, he was in the war also, right? If I'm not wrong, he fought in the war also. So he must have actually seen some things where, like the bureaucratic things that were done during the war that he probably wasn't too keen about. And a lot of that, I think, has gone into this character as well. What do you think, Pooja, on the subject? Like, what would you?
On Sherlock Holmes and the connection with Ayn Rand's books.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't really see
with
a connection.
libertarianism, not just.
No, I don't see a connection there actually, because he grew up in the times where he was written, not grew up. The novel grew up in the times when classical liberalism was just taking hold. And the writer Arthur Conan Doyle has actually based him upon his professor in medical college. Conan Doyle is a trained man of medicine, he's a doctor. So I think that's what it's based on. But yeah, the connection can be derived peripherally by the method of deduction. I think most libertarian ideas can just be figured out by the method of deduction. And yes, morality is outside the bounds of the government. Law, not so much probably, but morality definitely, because he lets go of a lot of criminals. And he saves the lady who murdered a guy who was trying to threaten her. So he does all that. Rebelling, I don't think so. I think that's just a modern portrayal. He's a very wise man in my opinion.
Understood. Okay. Now, the final question of the day. I think we are running out of time. It was an hour. What about the counterparts of these books? What critics would you suggest are there to these counter theories? Do you guys have any idea of these kind of books, like probably, or are there any articles, or are there any strong claims that against this kind of libertarianism kind of thing? So basically what I'm trying to get at is, are there anybody who poked holes in these ideas, and what was the defense of the libertarian kind of authors to counter these claims?
So yeah, if I again bring in philosophy into this, Ayn Rand per se did not even identify as a libertarian. She said, I vehemently disagree with what they are doing. And the reason she said that is, okay, these people are talking about free market capitalism and politics. That's all great. But the problem is the philosophical base that they have is all wrong. It's all like, that's what Ayn Rand said at least. And she gave these people that are on your screen right now as the counterpoints on whose philosophy these people are trying to build the economics. Their view of man, their metaphysics of man is such that in the end they are arguing for a free market on a policy basis, on a solely political basis. But they're not talking about human flourishing. They are not talking about your innate rights that you're born with. They weren't talking about that, and that's also one of the reasons she claims that liberalism fell. But these are on a philosophical basis counterpoints, and on an economical basis you all have multiple of them. You have Karl Marx, in today's time you have Piketty, you have all the works, and Keynesians are the strongest opponents because Marxism is majorly sidelined in economical circles as far as I'm aware today.
Right. All right, you guys, any last thoughts on books and things like that? Like, why should people even pick up a libertarian book? Why should they? I mean, are they happy with their lives right now and they're going about their daily business? But why should they stop at a store and pick up Ayn Rand or pick up any one of these authors that were kind of mentioned today, right? Why should they do that? Why should they pick up the manifesto of the Swatantra Party of the old day? Why should they pick up Fountainhead? Why should they pick up Atlas Shrugged? What do you guys think?
I'll just say it in one line. There's different reasons for people to pick up these different books, but I'll say it bluntly that if you don't want to be masters to what the most common ideas are out there, if you don't want to be slaves, if you don't want to be like betrothed, and if you don't want to be enslaved by those ideas out there, you must think for yourself, and these books are the instrument to do that.
Think for yourself. I can get behind that. Pooja, how about you? Oh, sorry.
I think one should contrast two schools of thoughts, two ideas in literature itself. I wrote on the chat as well. You can read Because of Monotony, and you can read Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead. And you'd realize the difference. You're a human being and you should not be dictated how to live by another person. You're a citizen. You're a private citizen. So pick it up, live your life, be optimistic, and only listen to things which are logical. The concept is called enlightened self-interest. So I think that's why people should pick it up, because we're bombarded with all the socialist and statist information. We need a counterpoint of view. So that's why we should pick it up.
So basically, in short, if you feel like you're not happy with kind of how, in terms of your governance of your life is going, and you're feeling a little constrained,
if you have rising cortisol levels, and you get flushed when people tell you what to do, just pick it up.
Yes. So that's going to be my post-stream question to people. Do you get upset when people tell you what to do every minute of your life? Like you wake up in the morning, they're like, Did you brush your teeth?
No, especially
Don't do that.
people. I just like add here. People will be like, parents will be like, you are telling my kids not to, do something that's objectively good to them. I'll just add here. You should, if you're getting upset by people who have no relation to you, no skin in the game. If things go wrong for you, if them telling you upsets you, then you should definitely pick it up. That's it. That is just one slight modification I'd like to say.
Right. So you don't basically have controlling parents is what you're trying to say, but there are.
Or I would like to add here,
Yes.
if someone asks you to get a stamp and signature on a document in the 21st century when digital India is the buzz, pick it up.
Pick it up. Okay, all right. Yeah. That's it. Those are the final thoughts from the team, guys. Thank you, Pooja and Dhruv for joining. I don't know when we lost Om and Tushar in this entire thing. I have no idea when we lost them or whether they tried to come back in or maybe there was a technical issue. I'm not very sure. But thank you guys for joining in. For the viewers who have been watching this is just the first of many series we are going to have on everything from not just books but just the ideology of living in our country. We'll try and make a lot of things, make a lot of content like this for you. So do subscribe to our channel, Zombie, and please do follow Pooja and Dhruv on Twitter. Next time, you guys, I will add your Twitter handles as well. I didn't have time to kind of ask your permission to do that, but I will do that next time. And I hope you guys will be on the show back again. Back again at some point. Would you guys like to come back for a round 2 of a powwow? Or okay.
100%.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So that's it from us. I hope you enjoyed this little podcast of ours. If you're inspired to take up a libertarian book, you can go ahead and definitely do that. You won't be sorry, and you would have learned something. Even if you're like a strong socialist, I think you will learn something out of it, and it'll question your mind. You don't have to be that. So from all of us here at the studio at Anup Zombie, thank you all for watching. Good night.